Today we're going to talk about the gels I bring with me to a marathon. All right, let's go pick up some gels. All right, got all the gels that I'm gonna need for a little while. Now I just gotta head back home, get all packed. We're heading out to grandma's house for the weekend. My niece is graduating from high school. But when I get back to the house, we'll talk a little bit more about the gels that I've picked. Running from work to the store and then from the store to home, got in about 8 miles today at a leisurely pace of about 9 minutes per mile today, picking up some gels to get ready for my next marathon. Now my marathon is just a couple of weeks away, but I already had a pretty good idea of the gels that I wanted to bring with me. Otherwise, I'd recommend that most people do this kind of trip weeks ahead of time, maybe even months ahead of time, so that way you can dial in which gels work best for you. Because while my ultimate strategy is going to be to use a mix and a variety of gels, some people may have some gastrointestinal issues, some people may have other preferences that make them want to choose only one kind of gel or maybe just two kinds of gels. I like to go with a mix of 4 different gels, and I'll go over the reasons why. But before I do that, I do want to go over some disclosures. I have worked with Roadrunner Sports in the past. They do send me shoes from time to time, but none of these gels were provided by Roadrunner Sports or any of the companies that make these gels. These were all gels that were purchased by me, and these are all my opinions in terms of the gels that I like to have. Now, with the disclosures out of the way, let's take a look at the 4 gels that I'll be bringing with me to my next marathon. And the reason I picked 4 is because I think that I'm going to want one about every 5 or 6 miles or so. So that puts me at about, if I have them every 5 miles, 20 miles in by the time I've used my last gel, or 24 miles in by the time I use my last gel if I'm going with one every 6 miles. So that I feel like is a good number to have. It is a lot of weight to carry while you're racing, but you are going to be eating them as you go, so your load will lighten over time. And some people, I know there's some of you that use no gels while you race a marathon. That's great for you guys. This is what has worked for me in the past in terms of the number of gels. But this will be the first year where I do a lot of mixing and matching. Now, I'm going over these in somewhat no particular order, because I don't really think that my nutrition strategy isn't going to be so detailed that I need to have one at a specific mile point or not. I'm kind of going to go by feel in terms of what do I feel like eating as I'm running that day. It's just, I think what you feel like eating or whatever you're craving is another good way of kind of listening to your body and letting your body tell you what it needs. So the first one that I'll talk about is actually the one that I couldn't pick up at Roadrunner Sports. This is one that I already had. I had a Maurten gel. I like these a lot. Maybe it's just the marketing that's getting to me. But I ran the Chicago Marathon last year and the Indianapolis Monumental Marathon last year with Maurten gels, and they seem to work really well for me. It's kind of like eating a flavorless jelly is probably the best way I can describe it, but it has a lot of sugar, and they get absorbed into your system really quickly. So that's a nice plus for that. It's easy on the stomach as well. So most people that have problems with other types of gels will usually not have problems with those. The downside to those is that they are bulky and expensive. So I think I'll just bring one of those with me for the race. I'll probably have that earlier on, either the first or the second gel. The next gel that let's take a look at is the Clif Shots. I really like these. I've been running with Clif gels for years now. This is the first time I've ever had a Goo before. They are very, very thick, pretty goopy. My running buddy, when he has them, he has to have them with water. I usually don't need to have this or any of the gels with water. I think I'm pretty lucky in that regard. This is one that I do really like. The flavor is usually really good. I like the mocha. There's also a double espresso one. And the main reason I like these, in addition to the sugars, it has a little bit of salt, which is something else that I look for, but it has caffeine in it. This has 50 milligrams of caffeine, which is about half of a cup of coffee, which while you're running, especially if you're not that accustomed to having caffeine, is a lot. It's going to feel like you're just putting a rocket fuel into your system. So it's a nice little pick-me-up, something that I like to have. I don't heart rate train, so I'm not worried about its effect on my heart rate. So this is another one that I really like. I've been eating those for a ton of time. The next one that I'll take a look at is relatively new. This is one I don't think I've actually done a review of, the Goo Octane, but I've been running with these since the winter, so I've had a couple of these. I've never actually had the sea salt and chocolate, but I've had the chocolate coconut, which I think is a delicious flavor. It's like eating a candy bar. This one I like because it has a lot of salt, 180 milligrams, which is quite a bit for a gel. And for me, from my 2017 marathon experience, I think that I lose a lot of salt as I sweat. And so for me, a big concern that I have is making sure I can replenish that salt back into my system, something that I can't get from just Gatorade. Gatorade has a little bit of salt in it, but I think not enough for me in terms of the later stages of a race. So this is something that I'll probably have towards the middle of the marathon, just to make sure I can load up on salt and have it into my system when my body needs it for those later stages of the race. The Goo Octane also is designed to have, it's for like ultra endurance, so it's like has more salt than the regular Goos. It also has amino acids, which they say are supposed to help for very long endurance activities. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but the taste is good. The salt is in there and there's sugar, so I've been enjoying that one as well. Also a little bit on the thicker side, but not a problem for me. But if you have either texture issues, or if your mouth gets really dry when you run, or if you have gastrointestinal sensitivity, something that you definitely want to test out before you get to race day. Now, the last one that I'll talk about for today is a Huma Plus, the chia gels. I really enjoy these. This one is a strawberry lemonade. That's my favorite flavor of this. It tastes pretty good. It's a little bit thinner than some of the Goos that are out there, so if that texture is off-putting to you, this is something that you might want to look at. They are a little bit expensive, but it does have caffeine in it, which I appreciate. This one only has, I think, 35 milligrams of caffeine, so not quite as much as the Clif Shots that I normally like to have, but it does have caffeine, and it also has quite a bit of sodium in it. I think this is the highest sodium of all the gels that I'm running in. This one has 245 milligrams of salt, so I think that is a nice number to have. If nothing else, it just makes me feel confident that I'm not going to be running out of salt by the end stages of our race. So those are the 4 that I'm going to bring with me. Last year, I think for Chicago, I think I brought 4, and then I maybe picked up a 5th on the course. I'm not sure. I think that's pretty much how it went. I picked up a Gatorade Endurance gel that they were handing out, but I didn't end up needing to take it. So 4 is what I ran with, and 4 is what I'm going to run with for the Tunnel Marathon coming up in just a couple of weeks. So that's kind of my strategy. I'll probably do the saltier ones towards the middle of the race. Maybe I'll do the Maurten one at the beginning, or maybe at the end. I'm not sure. I'm just going to kind of go by feel. Probably will have it towards the beginning just because it is a bulkier gel, and that way I can just get it out of my pocket and into my system, so I don't have to have that kind of dangling around in my shorts. So that's something else to think about as you're running with these, is how are you going to store them all. I'm just going to run with them in my pockets, 2 on each side, and we'll go from there. So those are the gels that I'm picking for my marathon. If you have any questions about any of those gels or about marathon nutrition generally, feel free to leave in the comments. I'd love to talk to you guys down there. Now, before I go, I want to remind you guys about the charity runner for this week. It's Vasil Ganchev, who ran the Edinburgh Marathon last weekend, raising money for Macmillan Cancer Support. I've donated $70 to his fundraising efforts, and I'll post links in the description in case you'd like to learn more about what he's doing or what Macmillan Cancer Support does. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it to the end of the video, and I will see you guys tomorrow.
Yo, what's going on?